I'll be reviewing one episode of Thomas the Tank Engine every week until I run out of show to review. Starting from the top with Season 1, Episode 1, Thomas and Gordon, or Thomas Gets Tricked, depending on which side of the pond you're watching from. Getting into it then, Thomas is a tank engine who lives at a big station on the island of Sodor. The episode starts off with a physical description of our main character, and we also start off the TV series as a whole by being told he is cheeky, a bit full of himself, and loves to play tricks on the others. But we also see him working hard on screen as we're getting this description, running around the yard getting trains ready. One of the engines Thomas likes to play tricks on is Gordon, the biggest, proudest engine on the island, and we see him do just that, though it seems to be more of a jump scare than a typical prank. One day, Gordon returns from pulling the big express, and he's having a well-earned rest in a siding by the station. Thomas sees this and comes up alongside him, whistling to scare him awake and following it up with a "Wake up, lazy bones, do some hard work for a change," and then running off laughing. Gordon decided not to let this go and thought about how he could get his revenge. Some days later, Thomas was slow to start. He was tired, couldn't raise steam. It was nearly time for the express, but the coaches weren't ready. Passengers were on the platform and Gordon was waiting. As he pulled up next to him to get the express coaches, Gordon told him to hurry up, in a rude manner, sure. But Thomas, in a bad mood from his rough start this morning, responded with "Hurry yourself," and moved off to prepare the train. Gordon responds to this with "Yes, I will." At least in the Ringo Starr narration, this sounds just a little ominous. Now, almost before the coaches had stopped moving, Gordon backs down and gets coupled up. He rushes the passengers to get in and takes off like a rocket. Thomas usually pushed the big trains out of the station, but today they didn't have the time to uncouple him first. We get Gordon's theme starting up for the first time as he races out of the station with 3 express coaches and a little tank engine trailing behind him. Gordon talks to his coaches, come on, as he picks up speed. Thomas wanted to stop, but he couldn't. Whistling and telling Gordon to stop did no good at all. Gordon and his coaches mocked him, in fact, as they continued on. Thomas was sore and tired. He had never and would never have gone this fast on his own. And when they finally stopped, Thomas got uncoupled and rolled away slowly to get turned around. He thought about everyone laughing at him for this as he turned. Gordon teased him as he crawled his way to fill up on water. "Well, little Thomas, now you know what hard work means, don't you?" Thomas went home very slowly, and was careful from here on out to not tease Gordon. In the US dub, he talks to himself, or thinks to himself rather, "Maybe I don't have to tease Gordon to feel important." This is a cute little story, serving as an introduction to what may be the 2 most important characters in the show. The fact that they chose to stick with only 2 characters for the first story is a good thing as well. Smooth introductions to 2 characters. By the end of this episode, we know a lot about who Thomas is. He's a tank engine. He prepares trains for bigger engines. He's a troublemaker and enjoys being something of a thorn in the side of others. He does work hard, but he thinks a bit too highly of himself and his work, thinking nobody works as hard as he does. We know a bit about Gordon, too. He's the biggest, the fastest, and strongest engine on the railway. He pulls the express, and he's pretty full of himself as well. He clearly doesn't shy away from getting revenge, even if it affects others quite harshly. He just dragged another engine a good few miles at speeds it absolutely wasn't made for, and if this were real life, it probably would have done serious damage to little Thomas. A little 6-coupled tank engine would hardly ever run over 60, and going over 50 was fairly rare from my understanding. Assuming Gordon is an LNERA1 like he was based off of, 80 miles per hour would be child's play for him. It's no wonder that Thomas was fighting for his life back there. To Gordon, it may have been a light jog. The moral of the story is kinda shoved down your throat at the end there, but what matters the most to me, I'd argue, is that both of our characters kinda suck. Thomas is a troublemaker, and Gordon takes revenge way too far. Thomas is something of an arrogant child, which he's kind of meant to be. He needs to be relatable to the target audience. He isn't meant to be mean-spirited or anything like that, just naive, and he had to learn the hard way, because some people do. Those people usually are children. Gordon, however, yeah, he may have been a little mean-spirited. Maybe he had an image to keep up, or maybe he was just especially cranky when he decided to shake the station pilot to bits, but he seemed really pleased with himself after, even teasing Thomas as he slowly wandered off to take on water. For a show about talking trains, they seem to handle their characters fairly realistically. At the start of the story, their characters are flawed. There is conflict. At the end of the story, the characters are still flawed. One of them rolls away looking stupid, and the other one rolls away looking like a real piece of work. They aren't even friends at the end, something even just the later model seasons wouldn't dare have happen at the end of a story. They just have so much real personality to them, conveyed in a 4-minute, 30-second episode of a show made with model trains in the space of a garage. There are a few set design things I want to talk about here. The Unlucky Tug hit the nail on the head when he said Season 1 was meant to look like a storybook. The engines being the only things that moves was a great choice in my opinion. The shots we see as they're leaving Knapford are just great. I love that tunnel scene just because of how small it feels. I'm not sure how to describe that. It looks like it was pulled right out of the Railway series, I guess. We get to see the viaduct here, too, in what was almost an awesome shot. Unfortunately, we see the end of the set here. However, we come back to it later with a far better view, and less end of set, and also some wonderful sunset lighting. The camera being stationary really helps make every scene feel like an illustration. Also, when Thomas is getting turned around to go home, we see into his funnel, and, well, it's white in there. They must have been using ceramic in the model or something like that. It's not a big deal, really, but worth mentioning is something that probably wasn't meant to happen. Not as bad as the first viaduct shot by any means. Also, having a tiny turntable in this yard was really cool, and I don't think we see it again until One Good Turn. If I'm gonna give these episodes ratings out of 10, this one's gonna get an 8. We have 2 new characters introduced, along with the whole series, of course. One fairly well fleshed out at the start. Most of the visuals are great, and the music, which I didn't really touch on, was great as well. The only things holding it back are the in-your-face moral at the end and the viaduct scene where you can peek over the edge of the set. I'd call this a really strong start. Definitely not the best the show can do, but it introduces us to this comfortable storybook world quite well. Also, I love the cheeky Thomas face when he first teases Gordon, and the bit where he's struggling to start in the morning. I mean, we've all been there. Also, before we get out of here, I just want to apologize for the weird borders. I don't want to just rip off Luke in The Unlucky Tug, but I also don't want to have to sacrifice my firstborn to Mattel, so I have to get creative or copy what others are doing and which works for them. So, no sound from the show. Unusual borders, maybe mirroring, probably color shifting. Also, I'd like to do more than one a week of these, but with a near full-time job and a schedule that changes wildly and weekly, that's probably not possible. Maybe, however, expect an extra one on Christmas then? But I don't know. I'll try to do something special. I'm Bitter, and hopefully I'll see you down in the comments here or on next week's video.